Tulsi lights, you know how to do it? You don't know how to turn on Tulsi lights?
Yeah, label Tulsi lights.
Hang on. You have to let, they're in the small box on the bottom. When you walk in, you'll see there's one box all by itself at the door. That's the left one. Don't forget to check. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari The divine grace of our Charan and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad ki, Govardhan, all glory to some devotees, all glory to some devotees, all glory to some devotees, all glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Early one, this is reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled At Home in Vrindavan. Early one morning in October, as Srila Prabhupada continued fasting from food and drink, Upendra made an innocent but somewhat impertinent complaint. "How can you refuse to drink?" he asked. "What is wrong if I don't drink?" Srila Prabhupada replied. "I feel no inconvenience." Upendra added that if Srila Prabhupada didn't drink, his body would become dehydrated. Prabhupada made no reply and Upendra left the room. "What about water?" Abhiram said. Srila Prabhupada thought for a moment and said, "So you discuss among yourselves and decide what you want me to do." Discuss? He seemed to be speaking of more than the merits of drinking water. "Discuss about recovery?" asked Abhiram. "I don't want," said Srila Prabhupada. "You say you don't want recovery, Srila Prabhupada?" "Yes," said Prabhupada. Abhiram then went to the outer room, the secretary's reception room. where some of the GBC men were sitting together. He dutifully mentioned what Srila Prabhupada had just said, to discuss among themselves about his recovery. But Abhiram's remark didn't seem like news. The devotees were already well aware that Prabhupada was making almost no attempt to carry on. They were resigned to it. Srila Prabhupada wanted to leave now, to die peacefully. They had been trying to encourage him to drink, but now he was determined to simply fast until the right time came. Whether they could accept it or not, it was happening. Therefore, Abhiram's comment provoked no formal discussion. That afternoon, Prabhupada called for Tamal Krishna, who was at that time taking his lunch. Tamal Krishna responded at once and entered the room along with several other GBC men. They all came very close to hear what Prabhupada wanted to say. If I want to survive, he said, of course I'll have to take something. His words came slowly but with difficulty. It is not possible to survive without taking any food. For my survival means so many inconveniences one after another. Therefore, I have decided to die peacefully. His voice trailed off, and everyone was too stunned to speak. They sat looking almost blankly at him as he lay with his eyes closed. He occasionally made a noise like, And only after several very long minutes did Tamal Krishna manage to ask Prabhupada if they should continue with the... By this time, more devotees, having finished lunch, were entering the room, and they began softly singing kirtan. Tamal Krishna leaned forward and assured Prabhupada about the stipend payments for his former family. Prabhupada acknowledged. Don't worry, said Tamal Krishna. I'll see that each of them is satisfied. They won't feel sorry in any way. You've provided for everyone, Srila Prabhupada. After a few minutes, Prabhupada turned his attention to Harisori, who was sobbing silently near Prabhupada's head. With some sternness in his voice, Prabhupada asked, What do you want me to survive? Why do you want me to survive? Why do you want me to survive? Harisori could not speak. He felt that if he asked Prabhupada to stay, it would be an offense, since he had already decided to leave. Harisori could not keep his emotions in check, and yet he did not want to stay and struggle. Neither did he nor any of the others want Prabhupada to leave. Somehow Tamal Krishna had not caught Prabhupada's last remark to Harisori, so he leaned forward towards Prabhupada, half questioning. They want you to survive. If I want to die, said Srila Prabhupada, it is a very peaceful death. You go on chanting. As the kirtan continued, Tamal Krishna asked to be excused. Prabhupada asked why, and he replied he was going for discussion. For discussion, said Srila Prabhupada? They want me to survive, and I want to die peacefully. I cannot make miracles. The physical body has to be maintained if I am to survive. But without taking food, how the physical body will go on? That is fanaticism. Everything is in the hands of Krishna, said Tamal Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's eyes had been closed, but suddenly he opened them and said, Krishna wants me to do as I like. The choice is mine. Krishna has given me full freedom. These words struck some of the devotees as extremely startling and different. But Brahmananda spoke up in the mood of resigned assurance. It doesn't matter whether you live or die, Prabhupada, he said. You'll always be with Krishna, and we will always be with you, because we will follow your instructions. Whether I live or die, Prabhupada said, I will always be Krishna's servant. So if Brahmananda has assured me that this movement will go on, then better let me die peacefully. The devotees who were only inches away from Prabhupada heard these faint words with dismay. After a few minutes of heavy silence, they resumed the kirtan. Prabhupada seemed to rest. Within a few minutes, all the available GBC men and senior sannyasis were gathered in the outer room. Brahmananda was feeling very low that he had told Prabhupada that everything would go on without him, and that Prabhupada had replied that he would therefore die. The devotees remained amazed at Prabhupada's statement that Krishna had given him freedom to do as he liked. These words now struck like a thunderbolt. With these words, Krishna has given me the choice. Prabhupada turned all the devotees' minds in a different direction. Abhiram reminded them that Prabhupada wanted them to discuss about his recovery, and now they were having that discussion. But they were confused and bewildered by the sudden change in Prabhupada's mood. Kirtananda Swami, the senior-most disciple, spoke up with clarity and logic. If Krishna has given Srila Prabhupada the independence to choose, that means he has also given us the independence. He has also given us the independence. So we should assert our independence and ask Srila Prabhupada to stay. One by one, devotees spoke up in support of the decision to ask Srila Prabhupada to stay. Yes, it was a fact that the Krishna conscious movement would go on without Srila Prabhupada's physical presence, but it wouldn't be the same. Yes, and Prabhupada hasn't finished translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, said Brahmananda. Yes, said another. We should ask Srila Prabhupada to stay for at least 5 or 10 years. 5 or 10 years? We should ask him to stay for 100 years. But not all of the GBC members are here to decide. Well, who in the GBC is going to say that we shouldn't ask Prabhupada to stay? They were in agreement. They did want Prabhupada to stay, and they should express their desire to him. The mood of the last few days had suddenly reversed. They were no longer in the depths of despair, but were thinking positively and enthusiastically that Srila Prabhupada would stay with them. Why should we think that there is no hope for him to become fit again, said Kirtanananda? Jesus could bring people back to life from the dead, and even mundane yogis can do it. So Srila Prabhupada certainly can if he wants. Now Brahmananda spoke up with great strength. We weren't realizing actually we need Prabhupada. That should be the understanding. There is no question of allowing Prabhupada out of our presence for a moment. Srila Prabhupada ki. Reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, Volume 1, chapter titled The Spiritual Masters. Mantra Guru Arayata Siksha Guru Gana Tanhara Charana Age Kare Bandhana. Please repeat. Mantra Guru Arayata Siksha Guru Gana Tanhara Charana Age Karye Bandhana. And we'll just go around since it's late. I first, and we'll do word for word. Mantra Guru, the initiating spiritual master. Ara, and also. Yata, as many as they are. Siksha Guru Gana, all the instructing spiritual masters. Tanhara, of all of them. Charana, unto the lotus feet. Age, at first. Kariye, I offer. Vandana, respectful obeisances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I first offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. Please repeat. I first offer my respectful obeisances at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami in his thesis, Bhakti Sandarbha 202, has stated that uncontaminated devotional service is the objective of pure Vaishnavas, and that one has to execute such service in the association of other devotees. By associating with devotees of Lord Krishna, one develops a sense of Krishna consciousness and thus becomes inclined toward the loving service of the Lord. This is the process of approaching the Supreme Lord by gradual appreciation and devotional service. If one desires unalloyed devotional service, one must associate with devotees of Sri Krishna, for by such association only can a conditioned soul achieve a taste for transcendental love and thus revive its eternal relationship with Godhead in a specific manifestation and in terms of the specific transcendental mellow, rasa, that one has eternally inherent in him. If one develops love for Krishna by Krishna conscious activities, one can know the supreme absolute truth. But he who tries to understand God simply by logical arguments will not succeed, nor will he get a taste for unalloyed devotion. The secret is that one must submissively listen to those who know perfectly the science of God, and one must begin the mode of service regulated by the preceptor. A devotee already attracted by the name, form, qualities, etc. of the Supreme Lord may be directed to his specific manner of devotional service. He need not waste time in approaching the Lord through logic. The expert spiritual master knows well how to engage his disciples' energy in a transcendental loving service of the Lord, and thus he engages a devotee in a specific devotional service according to his special tendency. A devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. One should always remember that a person who is reluctant to accept a spiritual master and be initiated is sure to be baffled in his endeavor to go back to Godhead. One who is not properly initiated may present himself as a great devotee, but in fact he is sure to encounter many stumbling blocks on his path of progress towards spiritual realizations, with the result that he must continue his term of material existence without relief. Such a helpless person is compared to a ship without a rudder, for such a ship can never reach its destination. It is imperative, therefore, that one accept a spiritual master if he at all desires to gain the favor of the Lord. The service of the spiritual master is essential. If there is no chance to serve the spiritual master directly, a devotee should serve him by remembering his instructions. There is no difference between the spiritual master's instructions and the spiritual master himself. In his absence, therefore, his words of direction should be the pride of the disciple. If one thinks that he is above consulting anyone else, including a spiritual master, he is at once an offender at the lotus feet of the Lord. Such an offender can never go back to Godhead. It is imperative that a serious person accept a bona fide spiritual master in terms of the Shastric injunctions. Sri Jiva Goswami advises that one not accept a spiritual master in terms of hereditary or customary social and ecclesiastical conventions. One should simply try to find a genuinely qualified spiritual master for actual advancement in spiritual understanding. Translation again. I first offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters. Om Gyanatmanda Shyagananjaran Shalakaya Chakshoran Mulitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Gramira Kipatamam Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So many points Srila Prabhupada goes over in this very instructive purport. The first he goes over is that sadhu sangha sarva shastrakoi. It says that one must associate with devotees of Sri Krishna, for by such association only can a conditioned soul achieve a taste for transcendental love and thus revive his eternal relationship with God in a specific manifestation and in terms of the specific transcendental mellow rasa that one is eternally inherent in him. Eternally inherent in him. So there's sometimes back in the day there was quite some confusion, and devotees would occasionally remove themselves from the Sangha in search of their so-called eternal relationship with Krishna, not satisfied with the process, which we understand takes time. If one in the neophyte stage thinks that he can immediately jump over the spiritual master in order to achieve this position of understanding his inherent spiritual personality, then he is at once bewildered and condemned. So this is not a difficult principle to appreciate if one is in the association of devotees. But it comes about when one is left to speculate, on this most esoteric aspect of devotional service, that one has his eternal relationship with Krishna. That we all know. But what exactly that eternal relationship is, what is the difference ultimately in means of serving? Whether one, just like here we see that some devotees are serving in the capacity of pujari or cook or sankirtan. All of these are on the absolute platform. There is no distinction in the efficacy of how one is rising upwards in spiritual life. They all bestow the exact same benediction of unalloyed devotional service. But one has to accept that principle. That if I can become an unalloyed devotee in any, of course we know there's these 5 primary relationships. And in the beginning we accept that one is just a servant. Neutrality doesn't come into play. But one first must adopt the identity that I am a servant of Krishna. Because without adopting that identity, then no further advancement can be made. No further realization can be made. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Krishna says he is giving the intelligence to those who are constantly devoted and worship him with love. So in which of these services which the spiritual master has given us can we not engage ourselves constantly with love and devotion? Someone is thinking, well, I can't mop the floor with love and devotion. I can only worship the deity with love and devotion. Or I can only go on book distribution with love and devotion. But this contradiction is only found on the material platform. If we fully accept that Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, that Krishna, his name, his form, his pastimes, his qualities, his paraphernalia, everything about Krishna is absolute. So this non-dual understanding is what frees us from the mental misgivings about any aspect of devotional service. One has to adopt that, those 100%, the attitude that I am a servant, whatever Krishna asked me to do, whatever the spiritual master asked me to do, without hesitation. Right? That's the definition. Prabhupada said, Sarvatmana in Mayapur. Sarvatmana. He said, full surrender. Heart and soul. No reservation. So who has come to that platform? And why would one think that therefore, without having achieved that level of determination, that he can then go seek out his so-called constitutional position, apart from das, anudas? That somebody wants to know, am I a gopi? Am I a blade of grass? Am I a cowherd boy? You know? Maybe I'm Mother Yashoda. Huh? So this contamination comes very subtly, because there are many ways that one can justify by, the reading of material, we call it above one's pay grade. If one is not satisfied hearing from the spiritual master, then automatically he'll seek out some other literary pursuit, which is the habit of materialists. They can't seem to find anything that resonates, so they keep jumping from one position to another. But the devotees are freed from that. When Krishna says, Sarva Dhamma Pratyajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, he's telling us directly that this is the conclusion, that you have to come to that stage first. And abandoning all varieties of religion means this pursuit of intellectual satisfaction simply for the sake of being known as a learned person. And someone will say, oh, he's such a learned person. But what is the definition of a learned person? Is one who acts, on that platform of realization, whatever platform he's on. If one has understood that my relationship with the spiritual master is in his best interest to remain fixed out of personal consideration, examining one's own internal constitution based on his limited realization, that if I can honestly say that, yes, I am ready to go to approach Krishna in some directly by some means separate from my relationship with the spiritual master, then he's a fool. He's a fool. If he's starting to think like this, and this is why it says that one has to have association with the devotees, because the devotees will keep him grounded. They're not holding him back. They're not envious that he thinks he's a gopi. When Prabhupada confronted that deviation in Los Angeles, he wasn't trying to discourage someone. He was simply telling them the facts, that you're not in a position to engage in this discussion. You're not on the level of Ramananda Roy. And if you think you are, then there's no need to discuss this further. Prabhupada said, you require the philosophy to be applied by an expert physician, namely the spiritual master. He said, everything is there. All of these books are there, and we can read them. Prabhupada has authorized many of them. But if we read them and the conclusion is that I no longer need my spiritual master, he's not telling me about this. I need to go to someone who's going to tell me about this. This is, why am I only getting this basic level of Sat Dharma 101? This is because if one is honest, and this is where we are. But those who have ambitious aspirations, not grounded in reality, they'll become bewildered. They'll become bewildered. Prabhupada, we see that when Prabhupada came over, which chronologically, in 1965 when Prabhupada left Calcutta, so now he's been aboard the Jaladuta for several days, if you are keeping that timeline. So he left Calcutta, I think it was August 17th, or somewhere around there, maybe it was just before that. And so he's in transit. And what book did Prabhupada take with him? He took the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There was many books to choose from. I mean, obviously Prabhupada could have taken any book, And once someone in Srila Prabhupada's capacity, being the pure devotee, being someone who was recognized even by those who didn't even know who he was, but by astrologers who said that this person is unique. and that he's come for some special purpose. But Prabhupada never adopted this persona that he was superior to anyone or anything. Instead, by his example, he was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and expressing himself in abject humility, that he felt himself incapable, but if the Lord so desired, and so this should be our position, if the Lord so desires, Dadami Buddha Yogam Tam, he will give the intelligence. But we tend to try to get around this by saying, well, I'm reading this and I'm understanding it. Pick any scripture. And yes, but then what does one do and how does he act? That is the real test. Not that it feels, I appreciate the learned presentation by the various Vaishnava scholars. Yes, of course we can. But what does one do now with this appreciation? Does he act with more determination to engage in the service of the spiritual master? Or does he start to become aloof that, no, I've now gone beyond the basics. I'm understanding so much more than my neophyte God brothers. I need to change my association. And so this has happened many times. It's not that we're presenting something without historical perspective. So if we can see this, that happened in the past, and why wouldn't we be cautious? We said that the devotees who are reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and who are appreciating these transcendental pastimes, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, they're already guaranteed Chaktvadevam Punarjanma Nayatima. They're not going back. So what else? If I have this guarantee, then what need is there to complicate things any further? Do I have everything required to engage in pure devotional service? Is there something missing? Have I not come to this conclusion after being, practicing, chanting, hearing, serving after so many years? Because if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what you read. Because one has to, at least in the beginning, one has to have that realization that I am a servant. Everything is based on that. All right? I am not this body, therefore, my eternal constitutional position is that I am a servant. I am subordinate. Krishna is Anor Aniyan Mahato. Krishna is the greatest and I am the smallest. What is that Prabhupada said to that devotee? One devotee expressed himself to Srila Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, I'm the greatest fool. What did Prabhupada say? He said, you are not the greatest anything. He's thinking he's expressing some humility before the spiritual master. But the spiritual master knows when this is a false thing. You can't fool the spiritual master. A genuine expression is how you act. There's one devotee who always used to come to Srila Prabhupada and he would fall down at his feet. Wherever Prabhupada would go, he would throw flowers. He would just speak off the top of his head. It was like the rambling of a small child. And Prabhupada looked at him one time, he says, why don't you do something practical? In other words, simply by words, you're not expressing anything. Prabhupada said you have to act in such a way that Krishna sees you. But still, after everything that someone has heard and experienced, still people don't want to engage in that way. And what does it mean to be Krishna conscious? To always remember Krishna and never forget him. But how am I doing that if I'm ignoring so many things? And I'm not making the effort to do things to the best of my capacity. That's all Prabhupada is asking. Do things to the best of my capacity. Not in a halfway state of mind, to do something just to check the box. I was told to do this. I was told to sweep the floor. But I'm not going to sweep it so good. I'm just going to sweep it just enough to fool someone, including myself. Right? Because ultimately, isn't that what they say? You're not fooling anyone. You're only fooling yourself. Even the karmis have that. They say it correctly. You're not fooling anyone. You're only fooling yourself. So we don't want to carry these misconceptions into spiritual life. There's enough baggage that we have to set aside. Don't keep, sometimes you get rid of one thing and you bring two in. Yeah? So you don't. This is a defect due to material conditioning. When you have an anartha, you want to get rid of it. You don't want to enhance it, embellish it, decorate it. No, it's an anartha. You get rid of it. It's gone. And you should then go to the next one. Just like if you're carrying a big credit card balance. They tell you, in multiple cards, they tell you pay off the smallest one first. Right? And then go to the next one. It makes sense to most people. You get it done. Because then you apply whatever you saved from that, you apply it to the next thing. So as you're making spiritual advancement, you keep applying whatever realization you have to the next level of purification. Unless one is thinking that, well, I'm 100% pure, I don't really need to do anything anymore. I just need to just eat Mahaprasadam. I mean, certainly, that's one. If you can get away with it, go for it. But there's not so many situations like that. But but it's a distinct possibility somewhere, someplace. Especially like we read about these pastimes in the spiritual world. These great sages and sadhus during the time, and who are we to speculate? But it said that the sages at the time of Lord Ramchandra, they became the gopis in Krishna's pastimes. Who can understand? And it wasn't, that they, in one lifetime, no. Who knows how many lifetimes? What's the point? Who can speculate? How many levels of purification? So, if so many lifetimes it takes, what do we expect to achieve in this lifetime by jumping around? And possibly missing the chance. It's such a delicate balance to strike that what do I want to achieve separate from the order of my spiritual master? If I'm harboring some innate, just like here it is described, one has this innate eternal relationship. But if my so-called innate conception is different from the reality, then I'm in a useless labor. But if I'm thinking I'm a servant, isn't that the das anudas, gopi bhartu pada kamaliya, das anudas. So this is Lord Chaitanya's conclusion. Should I have another one? Should I try to figure out something else? Or should I simply try to work on that, developing that attitude and that mentality? And have faith that the spiritual master has given me everything I need, including initiation, first and second initiation. This is, as Prabhupada emphasized, the first consideration, that one must accept a bona fide spiritual master in order to continue and achieve ultimate success on the path is back to home, back to Godhead. So we can be assured, and Prabhupada is, and of course the title of this chapter, The Spiritual Master, The emphasis is obvious, what Prabhupada is going in every one of these purports, and what he's saying, and that one develops love of Krishna by continuous service. Ahoitaki apatiyata yatma supatirati. That this will ultimately satisfy the self. And what is that? Unalloyed, unmotivated, uninterrupted. So occasionally we think, we, of course, and everything, and how do we understand when activities can be considered beneficial? Is that it can be done in the association of devotees. Right? You're not going to go out and try to convince, Sita Ramprabhu, let's go out to the nightclub. Sita Ram, should we go out? I heard there's a big nightclub out in Williamsburg. Maybe we should go, have some fun, right? Oh, what's Sita Ram going to say? He said, no, man, you're in Maya. You're crazy. What are you thinking? I was saying you have to know that if you try to enjoy something and it can't be done in the association of devotees, then it must not be bona fide. Because you're not going to convince the devotees to all go out together and go to Times Square and enjoy in what Prabhupada used to say, the naked dance shows. The naked dance shows. You can only do that on your own in Maya. And this is what happens. A person he knows that my God brothers and God sisters, they will stop me from doing that. And so similarly, they will encourage you in endeavors which are of a purely spiritual nature, like serving the Supreme Lord in his transcendental Vaikuntha expansion in New York City. Prabhupada said the temples of Vaikuntha. So should we question? Maybe we should ask Prabhupada for some clarification in that regard. Now, what did you mean, Prabhupada? What would Prabhupada say? You don't understand? You don't understand? So we have to appreciate, just from our limited perspective. If one is thinking, I'm a big devotee, I don't have to take instruction from anyone, I can engage in independent study without any consultation. Says, let me do this. I know what I'm doing. I'm on my own. No, he may have some success, yes. Some people are, from a previous birth, they are vyavasayatmika buddhi, they're fixed, they can do it. But it's very rare that people can be independent without the association of devotees, because eventually, if there's consensus that, hey, we should all be, getting ready for Janmashtami, we should all be serving in a cooperative way, we should all be doing as much as we can in order to please the Lord and his devotees and his guests, then that is a correct conclusion. It's literally goes without saying, as the saying goes. But yet we have reservation, and there it is again. Prabhupada said, no reservation. So you have to kick out that reservation, right? Full surrender, heart and soul, no reservation. So if you can achieve that, what a great accomplishment that would be. That ready to do whatever Krishna and the spiritual master request. But it's to get to that point, that is where that should be our endeavor. That to get to that point. And, just to be frank, I mean, I don't feel myself qualified in that regard. But I try to consider it very carefully that, whatever responsibility, whatever realization, whatever sense of duty there is, one should try to utilize all of those in coming to the correct conclusion, which ultimately is that I should just serve in whatever capacity is most useful according to the time and circumstances. because the time and circumstances will change, but your attitude shouldn't. And if you can carry that attitude with you wherever, then you will never have a problem. You will always be prepared. And Krishna will see you. This is Prabhupada's conclusion. Krishna will see you. Otherwise, just like here in Lilamrita, Prabhupada said, Krishna told me I can do whatever I want. Right? And so then the devotees were trying to find some way to utilize that to get Prabhupada to stay longer. Right? So everything is there. Krishna is giving us independence. But that independence doesn't mean to make the wrong decisions. It's there, of course. You can make the wrong decision. But the consequences are yours, 100%. Just like the benefit is there for you 100%. The consequences are also there. Sometimes people will advertise Kartik. Prabhupada used the analogy that just like in a big store, they have a sale in order to attract people to come into the store. So these different festivals are meant to encourage those who may not ordinarily feel the need to engage in devotional service on a regular basis. And what do they promise? Oh, if you come and you serve during Kartik, you make 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 times the benefit. Okay? But how should one understand that? You know, does that mean if I chant one round during Kartik, I never have to chant again for the rest of my life? Right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything for the devotees who engage in devotional service, because their devotional service is already on the absolute platform. There is no numerical, multiple. It's absolute. So there's no such impetus for a devotee who's engaged in devotional service to the Lord to go someplace else to engage in devotional service to the Lord on the promise of it being 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 my time. No, it's technically meaningless. But, as Prabhupada said, it attracts people to come to a holy place where they'll get additional purification that maybe they wouldn't get in Timbuktu or wherever they're coming from. You know? If they're not living in a temple, if they're not engaged in devotional service, and they're going to Vrindavan, yes, they will get what's called Agyata Sukriti. They will get Agyata Sukriti. Anyone who steps foot into Vrindavan makes spiritual benefit. But Prabhupada said, and here's the part that people don't like, that the consequences are also multiplied by 100, 1,000, or 10,000 times. Any offense. Any offense. And we know 10 of them that we recite every morning. So any offense will become multiplied 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 times. So one should carefully consider that devotional service has it's ahoitakya pratiyata. So if it's unmotivated, then why am I motivated to go to this place to supposedly get some additional benefit? Then what's my motivation? My motivation to get a shortcut? My motivation to make that somehow or other I'll get what Prabhupada used to say. There's that story. Do you ever hear the story about Vivekananda and Ramakrishna? You never heard that story? Sita Rama's heard the story. So, Ramakrishna was Vivekananda's guru. Right? So, he came to his disciple one time, Vivekananda, and he touched him on his head. And Vivekananda said he experienced a blinding light. A blinding light. And they both fell down. And then Vivekananda went to help Ramakrishna get up. And he was crying. And Vivekananda asked, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because I've given you all my power, now I have nothing." So somehow this misconception of what spiritual realization, tadvidi pranipatena pariprashna sevina. So the genuine guru, what does he do? He shows you the truth, tattva-darshan. How? Because he has seen the truth. And the truth is not simply a blinding light. I mean, we can say that Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavati, Shabda. Yes, there's realization of the Brahman. But it is not, the spiritual master's realization is not some finite resource that once applied is no longer there, like a bank account. I gave you all my money, now I have none. So when we hear these things, we should be very careful to understand how bogus these so-called spiritualists are. But it's for the common man who, without any understanding, it's very difficult to put into perspective. And after all, perspective is the definition of how one can apply intelligence for his benefit and the benefit of others. It says intelligence means to understand things in their proper perspective. Right? So it's very difficult. If one is considering that he is his body, then there's no way his perspective is finished. He has no perspective. What's that verse? Nasato vidyate bhavo, nabhavo vidyate ubayorpi distontas, tvanios tattva-darshana. At the sages, they automatically, that's their first thing. They understand what is real and what is not real, what is eternal, what is temporary. What is substance? Substance means it has it's a beginning and no end. It's not finite. And if we can grasp this alone, then we can apply it to every situation we ever encounter. That my best interest is to act on the platform that I am not this body. And that, whatever else I see that doesn't assist me in serving the spiritual master and executing devotional service is shrama eva hi kevalam, a useless waste of time. Doesn't matter where one thinks he is in the so-called Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama, or Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Atak Pumbir Dvija Shesta. He has to know. So hopefully, and so Prabhupada is giving us this Chaitanya Charitamrita specifically to appreciate how everything is being done first and foremost in the association of devotees. He's saying Vande Gurun. He's saying he's addressing the spiritual master in plural. So that there have many Siksha Guru, but only one initiating Guru. But all these gurus must be in complete agreement. Otherwise, then there's confusion. There's one person questioned that if I have my constitutional nature eternally, then I cannot speculate on what or who I think I am. One could follow in the footsteps of these eternal associates, not to become this eternal associate, but to learn the mood of service. So this is unfortunately not very well understood. Someone's thinking that my spiritual body, my siddha deha, that it will be revealed to me like the Guru Ganadash Dipika. You know, someone's thinking, well, I should read that book because maybe I'm in there. This is, of course, foolishness. But what's the difference between the foolishness and thinking that I could be there than to think that let me approach someone else and try to inquire what is my siddha sarup, my siddha deha? It is what it is. And if it's eternal, nothing's going to change it. Am I going to be disappointed if I'm a blade of grass in Goloka? Not me. But, you know, that's just me. And we don't want to, we want to get a question. Bhakta Ryan already got the mic ready, so we know Bhakta Ryan's got a question. Speak up, Bhakta Ryan. What's your question?
Thank you for the class. I was wondering if you could say more about, you're talking now services on the Absolute platform. It's an interesting idea that all the services on the Absolute platform. So what is the relationship between all the services that we do and the Yuga Dharma of chanting the holy name as a service? Is the Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan, is that different, or is it higher, or is it a fulfillment, or how do we understand that if all services absolute, all services the same in its efficacy?
Well, we already discussed it. Everything is absolute. Nama Chintamani Krishna. So that includes the name. The Yuga Dharma is the distribution of the name. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the taste one receives from that service is the impetus. If one feels enlivened by that service and he feels that he can dedicate himself to the extent that he can be fully absorbed without any interruption, then why not? But at the same time, what is the practical application of that? If that's the case, then I can go and chant in a solitary place? Or is the Yuga Dharma strictly in this, does it take 1 person, 2 persons, 10 persons, 100 persons? What is that? Sankirtan is the process, okay? And that process is fulfilled in many ways. Just like in an army, you know, you have to have cooks. You know, not everybody is holding the rifle on the front lines. Believe it or not, there's an administrative cadre. People who have to keep track of things like how many bullets and bombs are in the arsenal and in the stockpile. So all these things have to be there in order for Yuga Dharma to go on. Yeah? So some people are good as the soldiers on the front line, and some people are good as the cooks, but the service is absolute, and there is no difference.
You can understand that the service is absolute insofar as it relates to the Yuga Dharma, actually.
Only, like Prabhupada is saying here, that the spiritual master will engage you according to what he believes is in your best internal spiritual interest. So what happens when a devotee has some previous conception or misconception, and then the spiritual master tells him, I want you to distribute books. But the devotee wants to be a pujari, or he wants to be only on Harinam. What happens? The story, Prabhupada uses, not Prabhupada, but Prabhupada does use it. He illustrates how he knew that Harikesh Prabhu was capable of so much more than just clickety-clacking on the typewriter and being Prabhupada's secretary. That's all right. He knew that he had above average intelligence. So he wanted him to go and preach, but Harikesh wanted Prabhupada's association. Not realizing that the highest form of association is to accept the instruction of the spiritual master as one's life and soul, as Srila Prabhupada demonstrated for us. Even at that time, he always said that, you know, the instruction of my spiritual master is my life and soul. Guru mukha pad ma vakya chitte te kori arna kuriyamani. So don't be fixed in something that you really have no control over. Rather, one should just think that, let me become a servant. Whatever the spiritual master instructs, let me take that as my life and soul. You know, this is, the spiritual master could tell you anything, and it will be perfect. And it will lead you directly to the same destination. So, yeah, absolute. Not higher, not lower. Absolute. Very tricky if you start to think that this is better or this is not better. We should do it. Yeah. There are special forces. So if you want to join the special forces, you have to be really determined. You have to pass all the other tests. And then maybe you'll get an opportunity to do that in such a way where something, anyway, you'll see. Is that okay? We'll leave it at that for now. And you'll contemplate further and get back to me. Sitaram has the microphone.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, thank you for your class. I have a question.
Come closer, because
I was thinking about your question. You know, if we don't speak on a mic, the people doesn't hear the question. So that's why I would like to use the mic. Because sometimes
so that everyone can hear the question. But then I have to hear you also.
Right. Is there something as a good motive? Because you say that the devotional service must be ahituki, apratihata, unmotivated. Is there something as a good motive, like Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, Ved Vyasadeva has said, akarma, sarvakarma, moksha karma, udaradir, trivena, bhakti yogena, yajita, purusham param, trivena bhakti. Is there, that has to be motive. Is there a good motive?
Any motive that keeps one fixed, vyavasayamaka, in the conclusion that the spiritual master has delivered to you. But you know, some people are thinking that I can just pick whichever one sounds best to me. But tivrena bhakti yogena, yes, obviously. But it has to be, the motivation itself has to be coming from a platform of realization that I am a servant of my spiritual master. Can't come from a realization that I am an eternal servant of Krishna and I can act based on that independent conclusion. Yes, we are all servants of Krishna, absolutely. That's confirmed, right? But how to express that has to come from the spiritual master's specific relationship with you. It's not that I can express it. It's not that I go to my spiritual master and say, I want to do this. If one is presumptive in that respect, then if he's disappointed, what happens then? We see many have had that experience, that the spiritual master has given them instruction they didn't like, so therefore they went away. So if we're counting on the fact that nobody's checked me up to this point, nobody's checked me, then I'm really functioning on what's like probation, that I haven't, you know, I'm on parole and they haven't caught up with me yet to say, what are you supposed to be doing? Where's your ankle bracelet? Where's your monitor? You know, how come you're not, you know, doing this and this? You know, you have so many restrictions. Why are you not following them? So, just like a dog wandering the street, he's independent and he's living so-called free and he has no master. But all of these dogs, they're all there. And the one without the collar, he's thinking, oh, you have, what did Prabhupada call these? You know what Prabhupada called these? Dog collar. So every day when we wake up, we have to realize that, well, who am I? I'm the dog of the spiritual master. I'm not anything special. So I can conceive of many things, but is it a reality? We know one reality, that I am a servant of Krishna, that by His mercy, Guru Krishna Kripai Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij, by His mercy, I've received I will receive the mercy of Krishna. I'm destined to receive it. I've been wandering around His universe, multiple universes. But until I have His mercy, and how do I get that mercy? How do I get that spiritual master's mercy? Simply by His words becoming my life and soul. There is no other way. There's no other way. So I have to, for me, not for anyone else, I have to set aside any so-called, what can you say, contradictory conceptions that may interfere with that realization. Because there are many that will say, no, you can do this. You don't have to listen to that. You don't have to follow that. You don't have to do this. No. So many times. And isn't that the definition of Maya? Who's giving us this opportunity to deviate? Mama Maya Dharatya, Ma Me Viye Prapadyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite. So the opportunity to deviate is coming constantly, every single second. It's not just a one-time test. So therefore, one should adopt that which he can easily execute. And what's easier than just considering oneself a servant? He can consider himself a servant in a particular capacity, and therefore he can expand his responsibility. When you're a servant just waiting for somebody to tell you what to do, that's easy. But what if you're a servant and you have to exercise this constant attention to every single detail so that you're now, previously I was conscious only of my own bunk up in the ashram. I didn't have to think of anything else. Then I became the temple commander, and then I had to think of everybody's bunk and the floor that the bunk is sitting on and the bathrooms that everyone is using. And so it expands like this. It's very simple just to be a simple brahmachari. But it's difficult to stay in that position if one is not really humble, because he has to be ready to execute any order given to him. And many cannot do that. They feel that it's not in my best interest, Prabhu. I can be better engaged doing something else. Right? But again, that's for the spiritual master to say, like he told Harikesh. And then what did he do? He put him in a position where he knew he could be best utilized, and because he reluctantly accepted the order, he accepted it, but he accepted it reluctantly, but still he accepted it. Therefore, the Iron Curtain was pulled back and collapsed. And Krishna consciousness spread like wildfire. Just because he followed the orders reluctantly of his spiritual master. So yeah, any way we do it, but one must accept it. He may not like it. It may not fit his psycho, physio, whatever you want to call it, nature, which is bogus psychiatry and psychology, But if he executes it, there is no loss or diminution. And a little advancement saves one from the greatest fear. So I like these guarantees. I like that Krishna was encouraging Arjuna in so many ways and instructing him in so many ways and chastising him in so many ways. Because therefore we get the same experience. We get to be directly in contact. It's like people make hundreds of millions of dollars publicly speaking, all bogus nonsense. They pay someone to go out and speak some whatever. And we're personally getting a seminar directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead of how one should act in the material world, how one should think in the material world, how one should do everything in the material world. So, I like that question, Sitaram Prabhu. Thank you for allowing it to expand like that. Any other questions or comments? Mother Janaki? No? Okay. No problem. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Purports ki, Sri Sri Radha Gunadev ki. Yeah. Gaur Bhaktivinoda, as Ram Roy would say.